Right, deep breaths. Compose yourself. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Oh yes, everyone. We've got a lot to talk about, so you should probably get comfy, settle down for the next however many minutes, because there is a hell of a lot to talk about, and two pretty big stories, plus a number of other slightly smaller ones, well, probably considerably smaller, to be honest. I've not really got time to talk nonsense today, because we need to get to stuff. Where were you when you first heard that Kyogo Furuhashi could be heading to Manchester City? Yeah, it was a bit of a bombshell report or tweet, whatever way you look at it. I was live on the Celtic Ways morning briefing. Here's my face of, bemusement as I tried to work out what the hell was going on. Thankfully, since then, we've had the best part of a day to further work this out. So let's discuss this and the, 18 other Celtic stories that happened yesterday. Right, okay. In terms of Kyogo, there were some murmurings of Manchester City being interested in him early yesterday morning. At first, it just seemed like transfer silly season. And then we got this tweet, the bombshell moment, and it actually arrived from Fabrizio Romano, and it was strange in a number of ways, mainly because he called Kyogo a winger. It was this tweet that provided the shock moment due to Fabrizio Romano's immense online presence, but it's actually Sam Lee, who is the Manchester City correspondent for The Athletic, who broke the story. So I think it's worth ditching Romano happily at this stage and move on to someone like Sam Lee. Now, he posted an article on The Athletic yesterday morning, and he reported that Manchester City, the current FIFA Club World Champions, and many would say the best team in the world, were weighing up a move for our forward Kyogo Furuhashi. City are looking for a replacement for Julian Alvarez, who moved to Atletico Madrid earlier this summer. And according to Sam Lee, they want a player who is prepared to accept a squad role. City's search has been whittled down to two people, Kyogo and one other younger forward. Personal terms are said not to be an issue with Kyogo. He's said to be keen on a move to Manchester City if that opportunity arises. Can't massively blame him either. Perhaps the best team in the world. That's before we even get to the financial implications on Kyogo if he was to make this move. City are also trying to re-sign Ilkay Gundogan at the moment, so the talk from Lee is that they'll try and conclude that deal and then turn attention to what they're doing in terms of a forward. Now, Sam Lee was also on Clyde's Super Scoreboard last night, and as is often the case when you actually get to hear someone speak, you get a little bit more information than we got just from the report. So just on the kind of timing of this and how he'd heard and when he'd heard, Lee said, "It was the middle of last week I was told that City were looking for a striker, but this particular profile of not a top name, not somebody who's going to expect to play all the time, but still obviously good enough to play for City. Over the weekend, that profile got narrowed down more, and then Monday night I got the name, but obviously you can't put these things out straight away." He also then later on went on to explain a bit more why Manchester City are interested in Kyogo, because, you know, we absolutely love Kyogo, and I think the world of him. I think he's a terrific player. I still think he's actually underrated. But even so, when you hear of Manchester City being interested in him, it does take a little bit of getting used to. So basically they need a forward who is happy to play a bit part. The role that Alvarez played last season, although Alvarez, who is a striker, also played attacking midfield last season, so that's how he was able to get more game time. Obviously, he wasn't going to play much ahead of Erling Haaland. City don't need attacking midfielders. They have so many of them at the club. Gundogan's going to be the latest one who can play there. So basically they need a second choice striker who would be happy to be on the bench the majority of the time behind Haaland. And that's why they wouldn't go for someone like Ivan Toney, who's the obvious player I thought of straight away. Like Toney would be a good signing for them, but he'd probably want to play a bit more. The feeling would be that Kyogo would kind of be happy to go to City and play occasionally. They also want someone who's relatively cheap by their standards. Now, Lee mentioned Manuel Akanji, who cost them £15 million. I think Julian Alvarez cost them £15 million. So maybe that's the kind of fee they want to get Kyogo for. We'll come back on to this. I'm aware I've just kind of spoken for a few minutes about Manchester City, and that's not necessarily relevant to Celtic, what City want. But I just wanted to explain to you all why City are after Kyogo, and the fact that it does seem quite easy to shoot that down originally. And before I saw credible sources saying it, I didn't even bat an eyelid, to be honest. I didn't think for 1 minute that Manchester City would want to sign Kyogo. But when you actually look into what they're wanting, and they're wanting a backup forward, a backup striker who'd be happy to play that role, and that wouldn't cost them a massive amount of money, and obviously massive for them is very different to massive for Celtic, then you can see where Kyogo fits into this. And there's also the added bit of information that the current assistant manager at Manchester City, Juanma Leo, is the former manager of Kyogo at Vissel Kobe. So there's a link there. Obviously Kyogo scored against City just a couple of weeks ago in pre-season as well, so they'll be aware of him. So it kind of makes a bit of sense. What I would say, and I'm not like wishing Kyogo away or saying that this deal is complete or anything like that, it's far from that. It is just speculation really at this stage, but there is also something to this. It's not daft paper talk. It's not come from the media in Scotland, it's come from the media in Manchester, which I think is always interesting to realise as well. You then look at stuff like this from earlier in the month when Kyogo changed agency. We noted it at the time. He joined CAA Base, who I believe are one of the big dogs. So that's worth noting. And another thing worth noting is that Celtic don't want to sell Kyogo here. I don't think it's a given at all at this stage that Kyogo is going to leave Celtic, but Manchester City's interest is credible. The Daily Mail did stick out a report last night, and there was a line in it which suggested that we'd be unlikely to block a deal if City came to the table with more than £20 million. Now, the reality is that £20 million for a 29-year-old would represent pretty good business for Celtic, especially when you factor in his shoulder issues that we've spoken about over the past couple of weeks. Some people think that's something that could scupper a potential move to Manchester City. Right, okay, can I state the very obvious here? For me, losing Kyogo Furuhashi and Matt O'Reilly within a few days of each other near the end of the transfer window is unthinkable from a Celtic point of view. For me, it would probably scupper any real chance we have of making it to the knockout rounds of the UEFA Champions League, a top 24 position. I would find it hard to see Celtic really competing at that level when you take away probably our two best performers at that level last season. You look at, I think there was a couple of goals where it was literally O'Reilly to Kyogo, Lazio at home, Atletico Madrid at home. If you took those two out of the team, I think it would be difficult for us, very difficult in Europe. I think domestically, I honestly think, without disrespect to every other team in the league, I think would be fine. And that's not to say I don't have any faith in Adam Ida, of course I do, but Kyogo is Kyogo. So yeah, for me it's not an option to lose Kyogo. We don't have to sell him. He's contracted for a number of years. We don't need the money at all at the moment. That's me talking and thinking as a fan. I guess the club would probably view things pretty differently. as much as I say that, I also do concede that, like, if, and this is obviously, like, I guess hypothetical at this stage, but if City were to offer like £20 million, that would be like good value for Kyogo. As I say, a guy who's nearly 30, to get that kind of money would make a lot of sense. But my point here is, at what point does money become less important than our ambitions as a club under Brendan Rodgers, and the club's way they treat the fans who plough in all of this money and want to see ambition, want to see players coming in rather than leaving. We can accept Matt O'Reilly leaving because that's the transfer model, and you can probably afford to lose one big one a season. You can't afford to lose two big ones within a couple of days. So at what point does money, which we don't necessarily need because we've got so much of it and so much more coming through the Champions League and such a valuable squad that we could always sell down the line if we need more money, at what point does our ambitions as a club outweigh the financial implications of potentially cashing in on another big player? Yeah. I also think it's extremely bad luck, to be honest, that Manchester City are coming after our forward because they're Manchester City, and while Celtic are obviously a bigger club, these days in terms of global appeal, Manchester City's kind of as big as it gets. So there's an element of bad luck in there. I'm just hoping they end up looking elsewhere. The irony here for me is that Celtic selling to Manchester City in general actually has a lot of benefits. It would prove to potential future Celtic signings that you can come to Celtic and you can go to the very top of the game directly from Celtic. I also think if the move did happen, that Kyogo would do pretty well at Manchester City. I'm not one of these people who think he'd be out his depth or anything. And I think that would actually help Celtic as well down the line, because people will be looking at players coming from Celtic and going to the top teams and doing well, and other clubs would realise, wow, maybe they've actually got some gems there, and our reputation would be enhanced. So those are actually, in a funny way, the benefits of Celtic selling to Manchester City. And I was one of the people that hoped that when Matt O'Reilly moved, it would be to a bigger club than Brighton, one that people would take more notice of perhaps. But obviously just the fact it's Kyogo at this stage of the window, he's been responsible for so much of our joy over the 3 years. It is kind of unthinkable to lose him. But in the same way, it's very thinkable, I guess. So, yep, I've not sold Kyogo. It's not certainty. It's far from a certainty. It's just speculation at this stage. But City are serious, and it will probably come down to how much they are prepared to pay. As I say, the report last night, Celtic want 20 million. I guess if they offer that, I would hope the club wouldn't even sell at that, because I think, as I say, he's more important to us, I think, even than something like 20 million. But I guess the club would probably end up looking at that as being really good value. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting few days. I guess this may test our every player has a price mantra as well. Does every player have a price? Well, yes, but is there any caveats applied to that? Like, we can't, every player has his price, but we can't be selling two of our best players within a few days of each other at the end of the transfer window. Yeah, happy to move on from this, because this is going to be about an hour-long video, if not. The other pretty big story that would have led on, I think, every other video we've done so far, were it not for the fact that one of the best teams in the world wants to sign our beloved centre-forward, is that we're said to be on the way to making one of our most expensive signings in our entire history. And you probably hadn't even heard of the guy a day ago. Yes, it's all happening. The player is Mateusz Bogusz, a 22-year-old Polish attacking midfielder currently playing for Los Angeles FC, or LAFC, in the MLS. He is an attacking midfielder who likes to play off the front. He's featured as a false 9 for LAFC this season in the MLS. His stats are the thing that immediately jump out about him. He's very good stats: 13 goals, 5 assists in 24 MLS games this season. He's actually started all all of LAFC's league games this season, so that tells you something as well. Bit of a breakout year for him. The reports in Poland saying that he's likely to earn his first full Poland call-up for the upcoming international matches, so he's really on the rise here. And I reckon he seems a pretty exciting player. I mean, he's on track for 20 goals in the MLS this season. That's pretty impressive numbers, especially when he's not playing as an out attacker. He's been playing as a kind of attacking mid and false nine. Seems to have a very good shot on him, very good technically. As much as I hadn't heard of him a day ago, I really like the sound of Bogusz. Polish outlet Mekziki first reported this. They seem to think that it's a goer. Scott Burns from the Daily Record even suggested last night that a £8 million move is close. So this is going to be one of these ones that I think moves very quickly. Doesn't seem to be too many obstacles, certainly personal terms wise. Seems like Bogusz would view Celtic as a good move in his career. We're clearly interested in him. I guess the big question would be, is this the Matt O'Reilly replacement? Is he just a player we're going to sign regardless of Matt O'Reilly leaving? Because Brendan Rodgers did say he wanted a midfielder if Matt O'Reilly stayed, 2 if Matt O'Reilly goes, so you would say that we're certainly after 2. So could we be looking at someone like Bogusz as well as Arne Engels from Augsburg? I think that would be the dream for me, that O'Reilly moves on, as much as that bit isn't very dreamy, and we bring in Bogusz for maybe 8 million and Engels maybe for 10 million. You've still got like almost 10 million left over from the O'Reilly sale, and you brought in 2 players. That would be the dream scenario for me. But I think this is quite encouraging. As much as there's a hell of a lot of like negativity and pessimism associated with O'Reilly moving on and Kyogo potentially moving on, there is I think real excitement for me about the club potentially looking at that next bracket. And it's something Brendan Rodgers mentioned at his press conference on Friday. He clearly wants the club to look at that next price bracket, that kind of 6, 7, 8 million pound player rather than the 2, 3 and 4, because I think there's a bit of a difference in what you get. I've spoken about that previously. We've done that with Adam Ida, and there's signs now we're ready to do it again with Bogusz and possibly with Engels as well. So yeah, I find all that very exciting. If that's what happens in midfield, I don't think as fans we can have too many arguments with that. And then if we were to keep Kyogo, if that wasn't to materialise at Kyogo stuff, you'd then just be looking at left back and centre back as being the kind of main issues. So yeah, I don't know if it's just me and my glass half full. I've not even got a glass today, but my usual kind of glass half full mindset and approach to things. But I do still think there's a potential there for a good Celtic team this season. But there's just so much up in the air at the moment. There's just so much to happen over the past, the final, 7 or 8 days of the window. And I think some of it we can't really control. The Kyogo stuff, the O'Reilly stuff, that's kind of at the behest of other clubs coming in for our players. But I think if we had moved a lot quicker in this window, maybe already signed Bogusz, already signed a left back, already signed a centre back, would feel a lot calmer at this stage about things generally. I just think there's a feeling that there's so much work to do. And as I say, I've done us a slight disservice. We've still got, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 9 full days, I think, to do business, including today. So yeah, that's happening. I think this deal, from the sounds of things, seems like it's going to happen. So things have moved very quickly in that regard. Owen Beck still be mentioned as a left back. Right, players leaving. Yuki Kobayashi has joined Portuguese side Portimonense permanently. I don't believe this has been announced by Celtic, but it's done. He's signed a 4-year deal with them. We've even got this image of him, not zoomed in at all, in his new team's colours. So, yeah, that is done. He must really have made an impression over those 2 friendlies we had against Portimonense, a year ago. I feel bad for not offering any further comment on Kobayashi. Maybe we'll do that at some stage, but he's away. Mikey Johnson said to be being targeted by Burnley. I'm not totally sure on the source at this stage, but I do think Mikey Johnson will leave the club before the end of the window, either on loan or permanently. I think Brendan Rodgers kind of hinted at that last week when he said that Johnson will probably want to move on and play more regularly at this point in his career. So again, no problem with that. We have officially unveiled our 3rd kit for this season. Yeah, definitely trying to go down the casual route with this one. I don't really get any strong feelings either way on this. I don't hate it, but equally not sure I'll be buying it anytime soon. It's not quite the yellow away kit. Finally, fixture confirmation for our Premier Sports Cup quarter-final clash. That's a mouthful. At home to Falkirk, Sunday, the 22nd of September at 3 p.m. Another Sunday game, I believe. This is to do with the UEFA Champions League, which is on the following midweek. Oh, but that's only on Tuesday, Wednesdays, I hear you say. Well, no, Champions League football will take place on Thursdays. Well, one Thursday this coming season. The very first match day is over 3 days, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we could have Champions League football at Celtic Park on a Thursday night. There's a 1 in 3 chance of that happening. I guess as a result of that, the SPFL have to have us on the Sunday against Falkirk, just in case. Dear oh dear, that was a hell of a lot to get through today. Thankfully, I'm going to have John by my side tomorrow to discuss whatever stuff comes up between now and then. Barcelona in for Cameron Carter-Vickers. I don't know, I probably shouldn't joke about that. Thanks everyone.